Recording in progress. Hello, Stu. Welcome back to Dreadnought News. Thank you for coming back.
No worries. We'll have to we'll have to try and make it a weekly thing.
Yeah, or
Well,
twice a
campaign's on.
week. More the merrier. But I got some macadamia liqueur. I'm going to put it in some
Oh, nice.
in my coffee. Have an Irish coffee, but with macadamia liqueur. See how that goes.
Very
Sorry,
good.
sorry, I've been so busy lately. I need a bit of a drink, bit of a stiff drink. But yeah. So, how's your impression of the campaign? I spoke to you on a bit earlier today, and you were a bit black pilled. And that's the consensus wisdom. Dutton is getting smashed. He's just making error after error. I see it differently. I see a man who's, yeah, making mistakes. Yeah, we all make mistakes. He's in it. He's in the game. He's actually doing it, and he's got all the odds stacked against him, and he's playing pretty well. I mean, and there's different perspectives on this because you think he shouldn't have backtracked on the work from home issues, don't you?
Yeah, look, I think it's a major mistake to backtrack during a campaign. Like, because he's had a lot of time to plan this 6 weeks out. Um, and Tony Abbott is the closest anyone's come to the one-term upset. And his messaging in the 2013 campaign was
2010.
2010, sorry, was
It was so
unbelievably
consistent.
disciplined.
It was so consistent, but
Yeah.
he did have more to counter signal, namely the mining tax and
It- yeah, I'm dubious on that, but because there's a lot to work with. Like we've had
true.
there was a bigger slide in living standards under this government than there was under Rudd, and Rudd came to power right as 2008 blew up.
Mm.
Um,
He needs to
so
be hammering the Ute tax, the 4-wheel drive tax. That's a stealth tax which Bowen is bringing in. It's going to send the
yeah,
cost of new vehicles up $10,000. And people just Dutton needs to be hammering that more and more. Like he's just not doing that enough. I agree.
yeah, and I think like the work from home thing. I personally am of the view that I don't accept that that's an unpopular policy. I think the framing of it and the scare, like he should have anticipated the scare campaign. That is unforgivable. But the pitch is, have you ever been to a government department office in the Parliamentary Square in Canberra?
Yeah, I went to the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. I worked in there for 2 days as a consultant. So
Yeah, they're fucking
very
lush.
chillaxing. But I have a buddy who is in the public service, so,
Mm.
and we were ideologically aligned until he became a public servant, and now he's full on, against Dutton, and yeah, it's kind of hard to. I've been having conversations with him, but I'm just not getting through. So yeah, it's a stickler.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, the trouble is, and the thing that I think is particularly concerning. So, if you park the work from home thing, um, my own view on that is the pitch for that is your tax dollars are being spent on thousands of square meters of office in Canberra that sits empty. So, public servants demand that they have good facilities in their offices. They also demand to never attend those offices, and it all happens with your money.
Mm.
Um, that's the pitch. How that didn't come out, I don't. He never once said these offices cost us a fucking fortune and they sit empty.
Mm.
I don't understand why that wasn't the pitch out of the gates, but put that to one side. The unable to shrink the public service is a major problem because the public servants is too big and Labor is committed to making it bigger.
I
And
know, but you can't go from opposition presenting a big target like that. Unfortunately, a democracy is dumb. I would prefer to live like Singapore in a economically free autocracy than a democracy, frankly, or like Dubai or thing. I would seriously. That would be my preference. I'd prefer to be taxed at a lower rate, and sure, I don't
Mm,
get to have representative democracy as long as they're benevolent dictators. It's my life is better. It's better.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, look, my own view on that is I think massively expanding the government is a two main causes of inflation, energy policy and massive government spending on
Mm.
boondoggle
Oh,
dig the
NDIS
hole,
is
fill the hole
Exhibit
back in.
A.
Yeah.
The NDIS needs to be reined in. That is an absolute
The NDIS needs to be scrapped.
boondoggle. It does.
It,
It does. Or
it
at the very least,
it
restricted in
cannot be
conditions.
saved.
If you're restricted in conditions to like paraplegics, quadriplegics, or people like amputees, I think it's going to be
Something with a clear-cut, diagnosable physical
yeah physical, not
disability.
autism, not your mental retard.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I read yesterday like more than a third of all NDIS recipients are autism diagnosed.
I th- I
And
and
the
I
diagnostic criteria for autism just keeps getting more and more relaxed. So normal kids who are a bit like, like a bit socially awkward, now all of a sudden they're not a bit socially awkward and probably need to join a sports team. They're autism
but
and give me
here's the real
$1,000 a
scandal.
year for my house.
Stu,
Yeah.
here's the real scandal. And it's very politically incorrect to say so. So I hope we don't get censored by YouTube. But inbreeding causes astronomical rates of autism and mental retardation in the Muslim community. And it does. And this has been studied in Britain and has been proven like 30 IQ point drop amongst the Muslim children compared to other children in Britain.
30 IQ.
Yeah, they're
Jesus
cousins
Christ.
marrying cousins, and then you marry that cousin, and it just
Which
continues
is a
down.
bad idea. Yeah.
It's well, that's how it works in like the Pakistan sort of community and the Muslim community, and so that's happening in Western Sydney, and they're all going onto the NDIS, and yeah, me and you are paying for it. So in our own country, we're paying for you know,
Yeah, but so in any case, I think him boxing himself out of being able to shrink the size of government, I I'm
I
going to
don't think
go out. I think he's made it life hard for himself
he
there
has.
unnecessarily, and I simply refuse to accept that that needed to happen because every Labor government, every Liberal government in my adult life has campaigned on shrinking the size of government. All
Yeah,
of them.
but none of them
Uh,
have actually done it except for Campbell Newman. Campbell Newman
yeah.
did it in Queensland, so yeah, but yeah,
So
regardless, no, the campaign hasn't been perfect. It's been messy.
no, 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 yeah.
But when I look at
It's well
Albanese
taken.
speak,
It's winnable from here,
it
and
is, it
don't
is.
doom pill. Yeah.
Because when Albanese speaks, he speaks smugly and that turns people off. Obviously there's the 30% of people who are just so far left they would never consider voting for Dutton. And in many cases their livelihood depends on it. We all know people like that.
Public service. Yeah, which is another
Exactly.
reason why
But there's
shrink the
20%
public
of
service.
And there's, probably 30% of people are just going to vote, liberal because that's what their parents did. That's what they've done all their life. They're just going to do that. But there's a good chunk, there's 10% Greens, maybe 10% One Nation, but there's 20% of people who haven't made up their mind yet. And I think that when they look at Dutton, struggling and making mistakes, but doing so earnestly and doing so, he comes across as genuine in a way that Albanese and Bowen just do not come across that way. I think they're going to swing in behind him.
I think, yeah, look, I mean, we'll see what happens. But I he needs something to be like, and I think he's actually got a fairly target-rich environment, to be blunt. Like foreign policy under Penny Wong has been an unmitigated catastrophe.
Mm.
Like allowing, like his response to allowing a Chinese warship flotilla to encircle Australia and conduct live fire exercises was to say, well, I prefer they're not here. I'm like, I the Chinese Navy has never circumnavigated Australia before. That's a major problem. That's not regular saber rattling. Um, and I think um, like the received wisdom seems to be as well to like distance yourself from Trump because Australians by and large don't like Trump. I I remain to be seen. I'm sure the polling bears it out. And look, I must admit that I find that just in general conversation with the more extended family and friends, they're not keen on him. Um, and I wasn't back in 2016, but I am a full convert now. He's
Yeah, I wasn't. I was always keen on him, except I remember we back maybe like before he got his Mar-a-Lago raided. I thought, DeSantis would be the better pick for 2024 because Trump had one term, didn't make much of an impact on the deep state. But anyway, I'm so impressed with his second term. It,
yeah.
it's it's everything I voted for and more. Like I couldn't ask for him to do more. Like everything he's done is just exactly what I think needs to be done in America. And I
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And I
and that's a
think
minority viewpoint in Australia. You're right about that.
it is. And so one thing, for example, is like I had this discussion with the wife, and I said, yeah, but you need to think about these things like slightly differently. USAID was giving money to Australian universities to push woke agenda stuff,
Mm, like
which
the University
means
of Sydney.
the voice, the Yes campaign, to some degree or another, almost certainly received some level of USAID
100%. US taxpayers were paying to dispossess us of our property
of
rights.
our constitution. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as far as I'm concerned, um, and the other thing that you need to keep in mind is that the censorship industrial complex is a multinational thing. So our e-safety commissioner was attempting to browbeat Twitter into censoring American citizens on the grounds
Mm,
that we need to keep Australians safe, and there's no First Amendment here in Australia. So
yep.
what the Biden government was doing was attempting to outsource to Australia and to the UK and to the EU the ability to shut down speech in the US. So
Yeah.
this is a multi-layer thing. So I view USAID cuts to Australia as a fundamentally good thing because
Mm.
they're being used to fund woke garbage here.
Mm.
So
Tangentially, Dutton should commit to a First Amendment right, like a
yeah,
right to free speech in our constitution.
yeah,
He should at
because
least say,
our
"Oh, let's have a referendum about it." At least he should say that.
yeah, because my own yeah, I mean, I can discuss at length how we've come about with our implied freedom of political communication, but to me, it has all the hallmarks of judge-made law. Because
Mm.
judges have to decide a controversy in front of them, they can't really set up like a codification of law. They're always deciding an issue. So our freedom of speech came about through old wood protesting old wood forestry in Tasmania. And what it has essentially evolved into is a freedom to protest logging and almost nothing else. So, like, well, I mean, take a look at the protests in Melbourne with
Lockdowns.
the lockdowns. Now, the Australian Human Rights Commission has since released a report saying that fundamental violations of human rights took place during those
Mm. Oh, they
lockdowns,
so did. Oh,
which is just obvious. Like you
yeah.
can't lock people in their home 23 hours a day
Under
for
house
no reason.
arrest. Yeah.
It's a straight violation
Yeah.
of freedom of movement, which is a fundamental human right.
Yeah. Freedom of
Now,
assembly, freedom. Yeah.
yeah, and the law came down on no, you don't have the right to protest this. Now that's how fucking worthless our free speech in Australia is. You can
Mm,
protest logging, but if you get locked in your house for no reason for 23 hours a day for a year, you just have to suck it up.
mm. It's graceful.
Um, Outrageous. So I agree with you that it would be good to have a codified uh, right of freedom of speech. Um, but yeah, putting that stuff aside, I think Dutton needs to have like a much more. I think so far he seems to be suffering a bit from a lack of vision. You can kind of piecemeal it there together.
Mm.
I think he shouldn't distance himself from Trump. I think the tariff things are frustrating, but they'll pass. I think they're necessary. Um, so yes, the way that I would look at it is a 10% duty on importing our goods into America a worthwhile trade for America's security blanket of their navy?
I mean, yes, but let's not even, yes, but
Because it'll either be China or it will be the US that keeps our
yes,
shipping lines open.
obviously we're ethnically, have a common ethnic heritage with the United States, which does count, and I've got nothing but respect for the Han people. I think they're wise and industrious, but they're not our people. So that does count for something. The other thing is that actually those tariffs are going to benefit Australia. We've got our tariffs are the comparatively almost lower than anyone else's. And then
Mm,
the way that China will respond to having such huge tariffs is they will provide cheaper goods to Australian consumers as well. And so
mm.
it's for Australian consumers, the tariffs are good. Yeah, I don't think. Oh, your stock market portfolio went down briefly. It'll go back up.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I've been hurt pretty badly so far.
Right,
Um,
yeah, I liquidated all my shares like about 3 weeks ago, and I was like, damn, every day I saw that went higher, I was like, oh, I could have had that. Now I'm feeling sitting pretty because
yeah, yeah. I'm writing it out. I'm in a position to write it out, and I think mid next week I'll pull the trigger on buying the dip on a few things. Because I mean, I agree with you. I think the market is a bit finicky and panicky, but it seems like it's over in the US now. So it's not like so I saw people like having a shit. Oh my God, it's Black Wednesday like 1989 again. Oh my God, oh my God. But it all came straight back up.
Mm.
And no, it's not like that at all. Like the fundamentals of our economy at the moment are suffering from stagflation, and same in the US. There's nothing in there that's going to trigger like a fucking meltdown. So there's nothing lurking in the ether like subprime in the
Well, here's
US.
the thing, and I read an interesting Twitter thread about this. Is that that's why Trump hired Scott Bessent to exactly foresee any like you just mentioned any lurking thing which might possibly come in the future. Because before he joined the Trump administration, he was a hedge fund trader that like he was like a currency trader. He participated
Mm,
in the pounding of the pound, and so Trump's
mm.
like, well, this guy he can sniff out weaknesses in the economy. So I'm going to bring him onto my team, and we'll make moves to head off to forestall any potential, weaknesses which could develop. It's really smart.
Yeah. And he also has a bit of a poison pill to deal with because Janet Yellen has been pumping the US stock market to give Biden a good news story
Yeah.
viciously. So
Oh, yeah.
the 10-year bond rate, I can't remember how much debt he has maturing,
Yeah. It's
but
trillions. It's like four
it's,
trillion or something.
yeah, it's astronomical and it's got to get refinanced in the next 6 months.
Yeah. They're
Um,
trying to bring down the yields
so
on
they're
the
trying to bring down the
long term.
10-year bond cycle, which
Mm.
at the moment is backfiring. Well, it looks like it's backfiring, but I don't know what's going on there
I
exactly. I expect that there's some Chinese fuckery going
I
on
think
there.
that's what's happened. The,
It's the
the Chinese
second
are
big
dumping
target.
the yeah, they're
Yeah,
dumping their treasuries to try and
which you would
defend the
think,
yuan because that's what Scott Bessent
yeah,
is doing.
is
Just like
really
they
going.
attacked the pound and they
Yeah,
attacked the pigs currencies, Now they're attacking the yuan. The underlying
That's the
play, which
main
is
game.
underlying all
And
this. Yeah.
so far, that has been an out of control roaring success. So, so China is in, yeah, like China is fairly new to the financialization of the economy game. I don't think that they're as good at it as a Scott Besson. And I like their trade surplus means that in a trade war, Trump has the upper hand. So in any trade war situation, the party with the deficit has the stronger hand because you can't hurt them as much as he can hurt you.
Mm.
So I think
China can't replace that market. Uh,
no,
they might
no, it absolutely cannot.
they might try and
Um,
use Europe or Russia or I don't know. They don't really have many options.
yeah, well, it's not going to be Russia because Russia's economy, I don't think would be is not as big as California's. It probably wouldn't be as big as like it would probably rank in like one of the top 15 states. So you're not replacing the United States with a middle ranked single state
No,
in
yeah,
Russia.
well, they have one third the population of United States
Yeah.
as well.
Like the EU is probably a goer, but the trouble is there is that uh, the EU can't really afford to lose the American market either.
Mm, yeah.
And the other thing that they really can't afford to lose is the currency swap lines that the ECB uses. If that
Mm,
dries up, um, then liquidity in European banks is gone,
mm,
and Europe has a depression. Like Trump, I haven't seen Bessent say it this directly, but from listening to him talk about the European situation, he seems to be aware that he could cause hyperinflation. He could intentionally cause hyperinflation in Germany
mm,
within about 2 to 3 months.
yeah.
So that's a pretty big loaded gun to have at the Europeans' head. Like, oh, you want to play this game? You're going to make friends with China? No, no, you're
It-
not.
Ideally, the market that China would replace America with would be the Chinese middle class. Because the idea of that is that once they become more prosperous as well, they will require more political freedom as well and economic freedom as well.
Yeah, but I think I don't know. Like, I don't know what the true debt situation is. I've read from people that I believe that their debt situation is something like 400% of GDP.
Oh yeah, it's catastrophic once you include all of that provincial debt and municipal debt and yes, and
So I
sovereign
don't
debt
think
in
they
the
have a
banks.
middle class. I think their economy is all smoke and mirrors.
Mm,
There's always going to be some clout in a place that has a billion people,
mm.
but I think much more of it is totally for show. Like, I mean, a great example of this is Deep Search or whatever it was. Because Deep Search or Deep Seek.
Yeah, it was the Chinese AI competitor.
Yeah,
Deep,
that they said they'd
DeepSeek.
found a way to reduce compute by over 93%. And I'm like, Meta, Google, Microsoft, Twitter have all been pouring trillions of dollars into compute. And you undercut those people with their ability to get talent in the area. And like Google, it's weird actually, because Google DeepMind, they've been at this for quite a long time. They're probably the oldest of them.
Mm,
And it's bizarre to me that like
they're the worst.
ChatGPT and Grok shit all over Gemini.
Mm.
But I mean, that could be a political correctness thing because Gemini is like the woke bot. Um, so I think, well, I mean, but it's true though, right? Like it is
Mm.
woke as fuck. And so you can't, there's about four questions you can ask it without it. Just, You know, so I'm good for being scolded by you, Google. Fuck off. Shove it up your ass, Sergey. Um, but the point being is the idea that this no brand, no name company managed to find a way to undercut those four players by almost 100%. I was like, there's no fucking way. So I don't need to know a lot about AI. Just start with the premise that the CCP lies.
Yeah.
Nothing comes out of the CCP that is the truth. It's always self-serving. And then, yeah, like 2 weeks later, it came out. Oh, yeah, they've got a secret $7 billion arbitrage. They've stolen like $7 billion worth of Nvidia tech and
Yeah,
built a data
yeah.
center in Guangdong. And yeah, like, yeah, yeah, of course they did. So,
Do we need to have a
um,
talk about all the female Supreme Court justices siding up again and again against the
yeah,
blokes? Is that a
yeah.
thing now? Is it just
Well, I
gender
don't
war on
know.
the Supreme Court?
I think, I don't know. It's like the judgment, States versus JJD, I think it is, that lifted Judge Bersham's uh,
Injunction
nationwide
on
injunction.
repatriating illegal
Yeah,
immigrants.
like I read Sotomayor's judgment, which was the dissenting judgment, and like for whatever reason, Ketanji Brown Jackson, she just can't keep her mouth shut. So she wrote a concurring dissent, uh, but just said the circumstances of accepting this case are a disgrace. You didn't have to say anything, Brown. Sotomayor said that for like 10 pages. It's just keep your mouth shut. Didn't need to say a goddamn thing.
Yeah.
Um, you added absolutely nothing. But the reasoning is incoherent in her in
Sotomayor's or Katanji
in
Bragg?
Sotomayor's, yeah.
Uh,
So it's straight up incoherent. So at two levels. So the first level is she said, um, the Supreme Court doesn't have jurisdiction to review the injunction. Now,
who does then?
okay,
It's just so just
yeah. So who does
some
then? So she
just some
said no.
local court
Yeah,
guy is the final arbiter. That's it.
yeah. This kind of injunction is unreviewable because it's an emergency, time bound, blah 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 blah. So it
Uh,
expires. But the thing is that they can just reorder it. So yes, it expires, but at the end of the expiration, they can do it again.
hmm.
Um, so she was arguing that the Supreme Court doesn't have jurisdiction to hear the case in the first place. Um, but she does it on the basis that um, where we don't have jurisdiction because we have to allow due process. Like,
This is due process.
okay, yeah, yeah, this is starting to get a bit weird. Um, but then she goes on to say that the if you accept the like putting to aside the lack of jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, she then says the junior court has jurisdiction that it doesn't have. Um, so the reasoning of the majority was one, the injunction is appealable. Two, um, the Supreme the the district court doesn't have jurisdiction to hear the habeas corpus petition. So yeah, the only way to review the decision to deport is by lodging a writ of habeas corpus and the writ, well, lodging a petition for a writ of habeas corpus. And you can only do that in the jurisdiction in which you're confined. So the judge gave himself jurisdiction he didn't have because they didn't make a habeas corpus argument. They tried to make a constitutionality argument. They said, no, you can't do that. You've got to do it as a habeas corpus.
Hmm.
Now, what she said was he was entitled to give himself that jurisdiction so that he could have due process. But the due process in this
His
is a petition
constitutional.
for a writ of habeas corpus, which he didn't do.
Mm.
So she's saying that we don't have jurisdiction because he has to be given due process. But the due process that he sought is the wrong kind of due process. His due process is not a chance to challenge the Alien Enemies Act. It's a writ of habeas corpus against unlawful detention. And he can only do that in the relevant court, in the relevant jurisdiction. So you can see how it's incoherent, right? She's saying that we don't have jurisdiction because he has to have due process. Um, but the court, which doesn't have jurisdiction to hear it, and it doesn't have jurisdiction to hear it because it's applying the wrong due process. So, so it got the injunction was lifted, the um, and the case was taken off Judge Bichon, and sent to some Texas immigration court where this guy's going to be found to be a gang member. And it's like I remember somebody telling me off, oh well, good luck. We've now got a mother on welfare, and you know they had no reason to arrest him. And well, but he's an illegal immigrant. Everyone agreed that he had no right to be in the country. Doesn't matter that
Yeah,
he fathered a child.
that's the law.
If anything, that's a strong argument for deport them quickly.
Mm.
Because yeah, if he's been here 10 years, enforcing the law against him is gonna, more people will get dragged in. But you can't not enforce the law because that incentivizes people to try and drag it out, which is exactly
No,
what the court was doing.
no, you
But
can't have laws that aren't enforced because that is the pathway to tyranny. Because then you'll have prosecutors, enforcing the law against certain people and not enforcing other laws against different people. No, you
yeah,
need to have fewer laws, less laws.
clear
The laws that
laws
are on the
that are
books need to
that are
be
vigorously
enforced.
enforced. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Um, but yeah, so Sotomayor's judgment is just a disaster zone. And Amy Coney Barrett is a very smart woman. So I just can't compute to me why she joined it.
just virtue
The only
signaling.
thing that the only thing that I can think makes sense is she is calculating that it's all upside for her. So by joining the liberal judges, she doesn't affect the outcome. So the outcome remains the same. And she can have she can have the respite from being protested out the front of her house because she's saying, "Look, I'm nice, I'm friendly. Yes, I did Roe versus Wade, but look,
Yes.
I'm siding with the good people who refuse to deport violent, murderous gang members who are
Well,
here
it's a bad
illegally."
habit to get into, and
Oh yeah, well, it's just bad logic. It invites like now that she's been identified as someone that they can squeeze,
hmm.
she'll get squeezed all the time.
No,
More
well,
squeezing will happen. This is
but
what happened to
also,
Ken.
yeah, what happened to Kavanaugh happened under Biden's Department of Justice. We would
Yeah,
hope that under Pam Bondi's Department of Justice, any such activities to intimidate Supreme Court justices would be, quashed.
I see. I'm of two minds about that. I'm of two minds about that. Like, yes, I can see that Supreme Court justices should not be protested outside the front of their house 24 hours a day. Um, just because protesters have, but it doesn't happen to Sam Alito, and it doesn't happen to Clarence Thomas. And the reason it doesn't happen to Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas is that they know that it's pointless. Thomas will give him two fingers and say, "I'm going to do what I'm going to do." Um,
He's a legend. I love that guy.
yeah, he's incredible. But the but Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh have been they're not reliable, they're squibbish. And on
Gorsuch
the big
is
issues,
reliable.
they'll often go, "Oh well, we need to throw the liberals a bone here."
I don't think
That's
Kavanagh's been that bad. Not he hasn't been as good as Gorsuch though. Gorsuch has been hardcore.
yeah. Except Gorsuch did the was it Hobbes? No, that's Roe versus Wade. No, that's Dobbs.
Dobbs
Um,
decision.
Gorsuch wrote the one that equated gender identity with sex and therefore protected under Title IX. Gorsuch wrote that opinion,
Hmm.
which that's a catastrophe.
That was
I could not wrap my head around. Like even the proponents of gender ideology are
no
very
Dobbs
clear
was
that saying
Dobbs.
it's not sex.
That
It's
wasn't
not sex.
Dobbs.
No, it wasn't Dobbs. I can't remember the name of the judgment. Um, the facts of the case were you shouldn't be able to make a man pretending to be a woman. You have to allow him to wear a woman's uniform.
Okay. Well, I haven't got any time for that, but we also don't have any time for further discussion, Stu,
Oh,
because we're at our 40-minute limit. But it was very good to
yeah, yeah,
catch up, and
yeah,
let's do it again.
yeah. We'll have to do another to keep abreast of what's going on
We should live
in the
stream the
campaign.
election. We should find an open source feed and live stream it. I love watching.
Um,
I love election night.
I'm game. What, it's going to be a Saturday, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not for a while. Anyway, we'll get cut. We'll get cut off now. So I'll catch you later.